Hello. In this video, we are going to go over rotations and reflections and being able to identify them given original points and new points. Looking at 26, I see that there are given points that we start with are original points, and then they change to our new points. So this will be our original. This will be our new. What we are asking for is what are we happening here? Is there a reflection? Is there a rotation? These are rotations. So the first thing I do is write a rule for what's happening. X, Y changes. And how does it change? Well, the first thing I see that's happening here is that X and Y completely flip. And then next I notice X is multiplied by a -1 after it is flipped to the other side, and Y does not change. We make sure that follows the rules for the second one. 2, -1. So -1 should flip to the front as an X, and 2 should become -2. Perfect. Same thing for the next one. After identifying the rule, we can easily find out if this is a rotation and or a reflection. Well, since the X and Y flip accordingly and only one of them changes signs, it is pretty safe to assume that this is going to be a rotation. Now we have to find out what type of rotation. So X and Y flip and X becomes multiplied by -1. We see that is clockwise rotation of 90. So we can say 90-degree rotation. We can also see it's the same thing as, counterclockwise 270 rotation. This is Y negative. There's something in the way here, but this says X, Y to the same thing, Y -X. Basically, this is 270 counterclockwise and vice versa. So you can say rotate 90 degrees clockwise or 270 degrees counterclockwise. That was very messy. Let's rewrite that. 270 degrees counterclockwise. Okay, so that's number 26. Okay, for 28, let's take a look at 28. Now we're going to write a rule. It is really important that when you write the rule, don't use ones with the same numbers and or zeros. It's hard to see if something's been multiplied by a negative if you use a 0. And the 5, -5, it's hard to see if things were flipped. So we're going to go to 5, -5, or 1, -4, and kind of see what's going on. So again, like I said, 5 and 5 are the same number. So I want to go to -1, -4. So X and Y. What happens to our X and Y? X and Y don't move. X is multiplied by a -1. Y does not change. Since these guys don't flip, only X was changed. This is a reflection. Reflection. I did not spell that right. Let's try that one more time. That will be a reflection across the y-axis. And you can double check that by this rule here. Next, let's continue. I see 3, 0. I don't want to use a 0. I see 3, 3. I don't want to use the same number. And I see -1, 3. So those are two different numbers, and we're going to use those two. Let's use a different color first. So I set my rule, X, Y, and what does it turn into? X and Y do not flip, so we can keep them there, and we have to test the negatives now. Let's make this a little neater. Test the negatives. X is multiplied by a -1, Y is multiplied by a -1. And we can easily see that -X and -Y is the obvious flip of our rotation of 180 degrees. 180 degrees, counter or clockwise. So I always do clockwise personally, but everyone has their own preference. Let's continue. We see a rule for 32. 3 and 2 are different numbers, so we're going to set them up, X, Y. And what does this turn into? This turns into, will X and Y flip? Y stays the same. X stays the same. X is not multiplied by a negative, but Y changes signs and is multiplied by that negative one. So we see a negative Y, X. And looking at our charts, and we should be memorizing this at some point as well, this will be a 270 degrees clockwise rotation. Last couple. We write our rule, X, Y. And we'll start with the first one. They do not move. They stay in the same spot. We have to check the signs. Y does not change signs. X does change signs. So as you can see, negative X, Y once again, and that will be a rotation across Y axis. Last one, we have our XY rule. We write it out. We see that 3 and 2 are two different numbers, so we'll use those. We see that they flip. We see the X changes signs, the Y does not. And there we go. At this last point, we have a rotation of 90 degrees clockwise. So those are a few examples of rotations and reflections. Again, I strongly suggest writing a rule, then matching what you know to the rule. And then that makes these problems a lot easier. If you have any more questions or want different problems for me to cover, please send me an email. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a great day.